Hello, everybody, and I'm so glad that you're here listening to this. Welcome to The Dribble, the show where we take a closer look into the Boston Celtics, the rest of the NBA, and whatever else might come up. My name is Luke Erwin, and I am your host. Welcome to another great show. The Celtics obviously are in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they now know that they are playing the Indiana Pacers. It's going to be a great matchup, two great offenses going at it. And in this episode, we have two wars. And are either of these guests happening on the Dribble soil? Yes, they are. Both of these guests are on the Dribble. It is Max, it is Tim. The two guests that we have all the time, we are bringing them in together. The three brothers, the three blind mice, the three amigos are here to talk Celtics, Pacers, and Timmy and I will go over our major wager picks for next week and what happened last week. I don't really want to talk about it, but we're going to get into all of it. And we have so much to get into. And I suggest we do. Because this is the Dribble. Recording in progress.
I love to record.
I love recording your progress.
Not making much progress, but
yeah, I'm not making much progress. All right. Timmy, what is up, dude? Welcome back to Major Wager. How are we feeling?
We're feeling like a winner, baby.
You are a winner, dude. You are crushing me. Last week, I tried to bait you into betting $200, and I thought that was going to be to my benefit, but unfortunately it was to my demise. Last week you won your bet, which gave you $343, leaving you with $1,895. You're almost to that 2K mark, almost doubling what we started with. And I won my bet too. We both won, two winners, but I only put 100 down, and I did not put the 200 down, so I got 234, and I had ended with 1,252. So right now I am $650 or $640 less than you. So I need to make a big swing this week.
You do. You should have given into the press like I did.
I know.
You would have been right there with me. But sorry, I'm dinging off right here.
No, you keep dinging off, my brother.
You hear it? I mean, is that?
I can hear it, and it's great. No, the dings.
Leave it in. Leave it in. I'm leaving it in because friends contacting me.
People have been asking me if anybody contacts you and if anybody tries to ever reach you, or if you're just always in this dark room every single day of the year. I get that question. Yeah. So these are you just have a YouTube pulled up of just dings, fake dings to make it look like I'm popular.
Oh man, let me get that.
Oh wow, a lot of dings going on. We got a lot of dings popping up. All right, dings aside, we have a game. So while this is being recorded, the Nuggets Timberwolves game is about 30 minutes from tip off. So we are going to just make our picks right here before that game starts while we're recording. And like I said, I need to make a big swing because last time I did not bait into that 200, and I was listening to it over, and I thought I sounded so smart. I was like, oh no, Timmy, I'm not going to fall to that trap. But I'm falling to it this week. I'm betting 200 this week.
Yeah, baby. You got to do it.
I have to.
At a certain point in the conference finals. I mean, you only have so much time.
Exactly. So I'm going to do 200, and I'm going to do a 3-leg same game parlay for tonight's game, Game 7, Nuggets, Timberwolves. I have the Denver Nuggets money line as the first leg. My second leg is Anthony Edwards, Ant-Man, over 27.5 points. And I have Jamal Murray over 19.5 points. Okay. So that third leg is always the one that can get you. But yeah. And that is a plus 400. So I would win $1,000, including my 200. So 800 I would net if I were to win this. So it's a big swing.
That's great, Luke. I love that for you. It's not going to happen, but I love the bet. I do like it. I think, this could be a fun game. I can't wait to get off this pod with you and watch it. But it's going to be great. And I think the Nuggets, if I gun to my head, I had to pick, I would pick the Nuggets. And I like it. I mean, the Murray thing, if they're going to win, right? If the Nuggets are going to win, probably Murray has to have I mean, he's been very inconsistent in this playoff, so he has to have one of the good Murray nights.
Right.
So I like it. Yeah, I think it's good. You're swinging for the fences.
That's my thought process.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work if I have Anthony Edwards over 27.5 and Jamal Murray under. Like I truly think the Nuggets money line and that Jamal need to go together, right? They're not winning without him scoring over that. So
Well, I also bet on this game as we were instructed to do and texted
yeah.
you the bet before, so this is all very above board. Um, and yeah, so looking at the line plus 4.5, the line's 4.5 here. I decided to take the Wolves at plus 4.5 in my. I also did the same game parlay here. I think that it's going to be a close game. I think there's a possibility the Wolves win. I like this line. If I would have guessed the line, I would have thought it would be closer to like 2.5 or something. So, looked nice to me. I was like, all right, let's take 4.5. And then with that, I went all Ant-Man, all Anthony Edwards today. I think win or lose, he's gonna have a big game, I think.
Yeah.
And so I went Anthony Edwards over 2.5 threes, and Anthony Edwards 38.5. That's combined points, rebounds, and assists. I like those combo stats. I like to bet those ones when I do a prop.
Yeah.
So I could see him having 38 points, period. So, I mean, I really like that one. I would almost just bet that one alone.
Yeah.
Just to play it safe and just not safe and whatever, but just to do something, just to maintain my lead, I guess. But no, I decided to go with this. This one is plus 264. So again, the three legs are Minnesota Timberwolves plus 4.5. The Anthony Edwards over 2.5 threes, and then Anthony Edwards combined points, rebounds, and assists to exceed 38.5.
I like that. The only leg that it probably will happen is the 38.5 for Anthony Edwards.
I like that one the most. To me, the leg that might not happen is the Timberwolves plus 4.5.
Yeah, well, I think if you're going to pick the 38.5, that means he's going to have high assist numbers. He's not a great rebounder. And so then you'd have to have, I would almost take the Wolves money line at that point if you're going to have him scoring that much and assisting that much. Because even in the game where he had 43, he didn't assist that much. So sometimes he's all score and not a lot of other stuff. But I like that. That's good, because I think I'm going to win this bet. I'm liking my big swing, and I'm liking what you got. But earlier today, Timmy, we had another game 7. We had 2 game 7s, the Lord's Day, blessed with game 7s. The best thing in sports, God came down and gave us 2 game 7s, a classic rivalry, Pacers, Knicks, and of course tonight, like we just talked about, the Timberwolves at the Nuggets. But the first game, Pacers, Knicks, Pacers won, moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I say we bring in the third brother, the third amigo, the third blind mice.
I love it.
Let's bring in Maxey. Let's talk about this. Let's look forward to what we see in the Eastern Conference Finals between the Celtics and the Pacers. Let's bring him in. All right. Mackie, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Lukey, how are you? Happy to be here. I'm psyched that we're getting on to the Eastern Conference Finals. We'll get into how we feel about our opponent, but feeling good.
Yeah, man. And we got the 3 brothers, the 3 amigos, 3 blind mice, the 3 guys in an alley, the classic. Finally, for the first time on the Dribble, the 3 of us, which for those of you listening, the 3 of us are talking sports, talking Celtics nonstop, either text chain, on the phone. So this is the real deal. You're hearing the real deal here with the 3 of us.
Well, it's not quite the real deal. We won't subject the people to the text chain insanity, but this is the Erwin hour. Let's go.
This is the Erwin hour. Welcome to the Erwin hour. And maybe one day we'll release
the Erwin hour on NPR.
Maybe one day we'll release a book of all the text messages, even though I don't think any publisher would publish that kind of just downright tomfoolery, honestly. All right. So we got the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, and we're going to dive into what we like about that, don't like about that, and kind of what we've seen from them in the playoffs, because they've gotten some new acquisitions that have kind of made them a different team than their regular season team. But before that, there is a hot button issue that I talked about on the last pod, and I talked about it on my Instagram a little bit. And it's something that a lot of Celtics fans have to acknowledge, and that is the media bias with the Celtics, the media, the way that they're covering this Celtics team. And I just want to ask a question. I'm going to pull it to you guys. Is the media's perspective on the Celtics fair? And Tim, I'm going to pass that to you to go ahead. Is the media's perspective on the Boston Celtics fair? What do you think?
Yeah. So It's a good question, and I think the answer is like complicated because yeah, like for first of all, let's answer like the question of like what is the perception of the Celtics and what is sort of the thing we're responding to, which is that like yeah, I mean there is a perspective out there that's like the Celtics, aren't quite as good as their record. They're a little soft. Tatum maybe isn't a top tier star, doesn't compare to some of these other guys and these other teams. We play down to our competition. The team hasn't proven that we can be more than a good regular season team and actually get over the hump, as it were. Like all these things that we're not a juggernaut. Like you can hear it in the way that yeah, like a lot of these like pundits talk about the two conferences, for example, like, right? It's like, well, the Celtics can't play with their food this way if they face a juggernaut in Denver or in
Right.
Minnesota or even in Dallas or something. And it's never sort of the other way around, which is like, oh, well, whoever gets out of this Minnesota Denver series is going to have to face a real juggernaut in the Celtics, despite the fact that, we won 64 regular season games and that, all advanced metrics would suggest that we are an elite team. So yeah, I mean there are various narratives, and I do think some of them are valid. Like you asked, is it fair? Um, and I think Celtics fans, would sort of agree that there are certain habits this team gets into. There's certain sort of things that in various scenarios that the Celtics get into. But like, I don't know. I think by and large we're being evaluated. We're being penalized for how often we've been here.
Yeah.
Like it's
Absolutely.
true. Yeah, right. Like it's true this year. Like we've had like a weirdly easy path. And I think Celtics fans more than anyone feel like weird about that. It's like we're
Yep.
waiting for the playoffs to start, like waiting for the vibes to like get into like what we're used to in the postseason. But you know, it's funny that like given that, given the fact that we don't choose that, we don't choose our opponents. And yeah, we had the Heat without Jimmy Butler, we had the Cavs without Mitchell for a large stretches of it. Without Jared Allen for the entire series, LeVert missed a game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the narrative would suggest that we've like, despite the fact that we've faced injured competition, we haven't performed well, which is ridiculous to me. Like just like I was looking at these series, like we're looking at the Heat series, right? So game one, we won by 20, but it wasn't that close. It was 94-114, right? And it
Yeah.
was a great game. We sort of let them back in. I guess that's one of the things that people sort of say that the Celtics do by habit. Game two was a collapse, right? The Heat shot like historically well. We lost by 9 points. It's not like we got blown out. We lost by 9.
Yep.
And then in games 3, 4, and 5, 104 to 84, 102 to 88, 118 to 84. 84, 88, 84. And I know that's an injured team. But again, that whole series, 94 points, 84 points, 88 points, and 94 points in the wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we win in 5. We move on to the Cavs series. Game 1, we win by 25, a dominant game, 95 to 120. Game 2 is our worst game of the entire postseason, right? We lost by 24 points. It was a poor showing, for sure.
Right. Right.
In both game 2s, we've had really poor showings. And then again, the bounce back from that game 2 delta, we have 106-93, 102-109, and 98-113. These are closer games, obviously, in the Heat series, but pay attention to those numbers. Again, 93, 102, 98. So in our 8 wins in the postseason and 2 losses, in our 8 wins, we've only allowed a team to surpass 100 points one time.
Yeah.
102. So
Yeah.
I don't really understand the narrative that the Celtics have played with their food, played down to their competition. Yeah, we've let teams back in for little stretches, but to my eye, the team has always responded well. And so that's the main part of the narrative that I bristle against. It's like, and it's like, so what? Do we need to win by 20 every night? We've won both series in 5. Yeah, we've had a couple poor performances, but I think in general, this team has behaved like and performed like the juggernaut that they are. So that is my take, at least in general.
Yeah, that's a good take. And Max, what do you think about that? Like a lot of good points there. What's your feeling on that?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, essentially, I like to think of this as we're the kid who failed the class once, and now that we're taking it again, the teacher is grading us on a curve that is so much more advanced than anybody else's, and they're not treating it fairly in a way. Earlier today, and in every game that you've ever watched where a team goes up by 20, the commentators will say any team in this league can go off and close this gap. They will say that.
Yep.
And yet when it happens to us against any team, it's our fault and not their success. A team can shoot 68% from three versus us in a half. And I almost feel bad for the other team because it's being essentially attributed to like, well, this is the Celtics. And it's like the Heat is like, well, I mean, these bench guys just made a ton of shots. I mean, like, not that I feel too bad for the Heat bench guys, but I'm just saying, I feel like we're sort of in this holding pattern of we're being judged as our past mistakes and just things that we got to the Eastern Conference way too early. People love to say like, oh, well, a couple of those times they were really young, they were, just happy to be there. But then we're carrying all that baggage, but then people are also saying because of all these new acquisitions, which means it's a new team and not the old team, but they don't want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Because of that, we're now a super team who is still competing with that. So it's not that this team has let the rope slip this many times. It's that the Celtics over the past 8 years have. And that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, Max, I agree with you. And the thing is, like, that's why I say we're sort of, you put it like we're graded on a curve, and I think that's a good way to put it. But like,
yeah,
when you're there 6 times out of the last 8 years, which the Celtics have been, you have a lot of the league in general, like, has a lot of data on how we perform. That's a lot of playoff games and a lot of series. And like you say, we let the rope slip. It's true. Like, there have been times. There is no excuse for going down 0-3 against the Heat last year.
Exactly.
That was, again, as you pointed out, a different team, but that was a lack of effort. It was a lack of understanding the moment. And then, we almost crawled our way back into that series. We were a Tatum ankle sprain away from probably doing it, in my opinion. But, we've had that moment, certainly against the Warriors in the finals the year before, with Tatum's poor performance and others. So, but we've had so many good moments too. And it's just that those moments don't get remembered. It's just the confirmation bias that, the Celtics are going to do it again. And by do it again, it means, play down to competition, let go of the rope, somehow lose a series that they should probably win. But what gets forgotten is all these moments, right? That, we beat, Tatum and the Celtics team has gone through Giannis. They've gone through really good teams.
Every year we have had one of the most difficult paths to the finals. And we have always, I've been saying this for a long time, we have exceeded expectations because we've gotten there and we've done that. We act like the media acts like we were supposed to be there in those moments, but us beating Giannis in that series, everybody picked the Bucks against us. And even that year that we beat Miami and we won in Game 7 in Miami, nobody wants to talk about that, but right, winning Game 7 in Miami, getting to the finals. And that was a difficult run with the Nets in round 1, where again, it was KD, Kyrie, they were healthy. And that team, nobody wanted to face the Nets. Everybody wanted to avoid the Nets in that. And they said that the Celtics were stupid for grabbing that seed and having to play the Nets. We swept them. It was easy. Obviously, like I said, the Bucks, and then the Miami Heat were the number 1 seed in that year. People think that just because it's Jimmy Butler and they always seem like they're the underdog because they play that card. They were the number 1 seed, which the Celtics have never been until this year. This is the first year the Celtics have been the number 1 seed. And then we go up against a dynasty still with the gears turning in Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson. And Steph Curry has his best finals performance of all time. And Tatum crumbled, but he had 13 assists in the first game. And he averaged similar numbers than LeBron's first stint in the finals in that series. And he didn't play well. I'm not saying he played well in that series, but
we should have won that finals.
We should have won that finals.
I really feel like that was
absolutely.
That was us, not the Warriors.
But if we look at
Andrew Wiggins.
And it was Andrew Wiggins, defensive performance of his lifetime. But if we look at this team, Max, to your point, like this team is a different team. People love to mention, we're talking about the narrative on this team right now, and it's obviously reflected by the history, but it's also reflected by the injuries. I don't know about you guys, but watching that Knicks-Pacers game, I did not want to play the Knicks. We would crush the Knicks, but I didn't want to play the Knicks because of the narrative that would have been. It would have been Brunson's hand is now fractured. They have obviously Bogdanovich out, Mitchell Robinson out. Josh Hart is dealing with abdominal issues. Julius Randle's been out for a long time. OG Anunoby's out. So
he's the biggest one.
And he's the biggest one. So it would have been just a continued narrative that we were, again, playing an injured team. So I'm happy that we're playing the Pacers and they're fully suited up. But if you look at the Cavs series and the Miami Heat series, people point to Jimmy Butler. Okay, Jimmy Butler averages 20 points per game. And in the playoffs, he averages 21.3 points per game. So you can think it's a major elevation, but it's 1.3 points more. And then if you want to talk about Terry Rozier, he shot the Heat out of games. I don't know why people are mentioning Terry Rozier like he's Michael Jordan, like, oh, and they didn't have Terry Rozier. Okay, Terry Rozier lost them games all year. And then Terry Rozier is also a defensive liability. He does not play defense. We would have just crushed them. And to the Miami Heat's credit, best coach in the league. You can't say best coach in the league and then ignore that. He had them playing well. They had that one great shooting night, which we gave them that one, but we took care of business in the rest of the games. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers, they didn't have Donovan Mitchell for the last 2 games, right? 2 or 3 games?
2 games.
2 games. And they had him for the first 3. We were 2-1 in those games. And we didn't have Kristaps Porzingis, which no one mentions, which it's the only thing that I have a problem with. Why my answer is the media criticism and perspective is not fair is because they are only looking at our faults, and they're not looking at what the other teams are doing, but they're also only looking at what the other teams don't have. They can't all year long. The media talked about this team doesn't do anything without Porzingis. Porzingis is the key. Porzingis is the number one element of the Celtics team to make them a successful team. And then we lose him and they ignore it. I haven't heard Kristaps Porzingis names one time on any podcast, on any ESPN show. It's like he didn't exist. And it's like 3 weeks ago before he got hurt, he wasn't the guy that they were saying is the key. And all of a sudden he's out and they don't mention it. It's all about the injuries on the other side. And you play who you play. And we had obviously the Cavs, they were super depleted too. And I'm not going to sit here and say that those were tough matchups. They were easy, but they also had guys who stepped up and who shot well from the field and who played well. And they were both top 10 defenses. So it's tough.
But Luke, so I know we're not getting any like recognition for Porzingis being out, but I think part of the reason for that is we are the only team, and before the injuries, we were the only team without an excuse.
Yeah.
The Nuggets have an excuse. Everybody keeps saying it's really hard to go back to back. That's very true. All these excuses are very true. But the fact of the matter is the Wolves' young star in Anthony Edwards, who is not who he's going to be, is an excuse why if they fall short, it's not that big of a deal. They have not like a pass, but in a way, it wouldn't be the end of the world. The Pacers, nobody even thought they were going to get this far for some reason because everybody undersold them because they thought you'd never get out from under a shooting slump. Apparently, the Knicks, everybody was just impressed by everything they did already. So anytime they went out, it was like good for them. By the way, I agree with all these narratives. I think these are all true. But even I don't think the injuries were ever the thing that started the excuse for all these teams. So the fact that we're not getting it kind of makes sense. I also think it's kind of strange that we're being faulted for having historically very durable players. I mean, I know partially injuries come down to luck, so I'm not like blaming players that get hurt, obviously. But the fact of the matter is, if you have a team of people and you try to construct a team of people that are always healthy and you're not taking tons of risks, we took a risk on one guy, and guess what? He's hurt right now. That's kind of the way it goes.
But the timing on that injury, I mean, you could say,
fuck, perfect,
that sucks, but it's kind of perfect. Yeah, like I mean, who knows how he's going to come back? He might look. I mean, we don't know how he's going to look, but it is sort of perfect because it's like, well, although he would be good in this Pacers series, we'll talk about the matchup there with Turner, but like, you're kind of like, well, this couldn't have worked out any better in terms of timing if he had gone out, late in the Cavs series, and maybe he's not going to play in the finals, and this is much more catastrophic. I think it's funny, like, the concept that, I mean, so first of all, to say like whether it's fair or not fair, I will say the fair part is, and I think maybe you will both agree with this. We have reached a point getting there 6 times in the last 8 years where I don't think it's necessarily a big failure that those previous teams did not win a title, because you're not really supposed to. I mean, those were really young teams. We overperformed, frankly. We went farther than we should have because of, the great performances by certain players, Tatum being among them. And, we didn't seal the deal. We didn't win a finals. We didn't win a championship. Fine. It would have been strange if we did. This does feel like the year.
Yeah.
Like, well, just show me you can really do it.
This is the first year.
That's where I do think the narrative, I don't think that's exactly what people are saying, but like that narrative among Celtics fans especially is like, yeah, I mean, look, if we don't win, if we played the Nuggets, let's say, I don't know what the score of this game is, but like if we play the Nuggets or the Wolves and it's a really close series and we lose in 7 and it's tight and Tatum plays well, like we won't consider that a catastrophe, I don't think, right? Like no. it's we would like to have won a championship, but We don't feel entitled to a championship,
Certainly
but
not.
it does feel like that's the one part of it I agree with. It's like this is the year, and if we fold like we sometimes have, then yeah, the narrative will have real credence. It's just that I don't understand so far, having played two series where yes, the other team is outmatched. We have held teams below 100
We've
points.
done our job.
Won both series in five. We have done our job, and it just feels like the coverage would suggest that we haven't. And I also feel like it's unfair to Tatum. And we can move into him a little bit because I have some stuff on Tatum here. Like, I was the first to criticize, and we have criticized on this podcast, some of Tatum's play in, especially the losses. I thought, especially the Cavs loss.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it was one of his worst games, in my opinion. And so, like, we had criticized Tatum sometimes, and we criticized him in the regular season. He had that no-show against the Nuggets where he barely shot. He barely sort of.
Yep.
There are moments where Tatum can sort of be frustrating. I'm not saying he's a perfect player, but his recent games after that game two collapse versus the Cavs, 25, 10, and 9, 33, 11, and 5, 33, 13, and 6, all three wins. Has he had a 49, 50-point game like he's had? No, he hasn't needed to necessarily.
Yeah. No, we don't want him to. I mean, we want him to, but that's not the kind of game
right.
we need him to play.
But just in general, Jason Tatum, I mean, he's still young. He has 60 playoff wins. 60. Jokic has 44.
Yep.
Giannis has 43.
Yep.
Embiid has 29. Look, I know the teams aren't equal, but those guys have had talent. I mean, Giannis and Jokic have won championships.
Yeah.
Embiid has had guys on that team.
That's it.
Like he hasn't. Like these are good teams. It's not like I'm picking like, well, Trae Young has this many. It's like these are perennial MVP candidates, and Jason Tatum has been the best player on every team, every Celtics team that has gone to the conference finals in that stretch that we talk about, that 6-8 stretch.
Yeah.
So and then it's like, well, but he doesn't have big playoff moments. Like, absolutely he does. I mean, game 7 against the Sixers. I mean, that was a series where he played poorly at points, but 51 points.
51 points, and he played inside and out. And then obviously game 6 in Milwaukee, which that was a team fresh off of a championship, which everybody picked the Milwaukee Bucks to win that series. And that was in Milwaukee. The Celtics were down 2-3 in that series. And
46 points.
And 46 points in that game. He shot incredibly. And Giannis had an amazing game. They were fully healthy for all the haters out there. And he did his job, and he did it in the fourth. I think he had 15 points in the fourth or something. And then even the game before the 51-point game, he had an abysmal shooting night in Philly, same situation, on the road, down 2-3, facing elimination, terrible shooting night. And he had the balls to keep shooting. And in the fourth quarter with 6 minutes left, he outscored the entire Sixers team in the entire fourth quarter. He scored 16. The Sixers scored 15 or 14. He outscored the entire team, and he just put the game away. And those are big moments. And those are moments that it seems like people act like never have happened. Like the narrative that he's a bad, I'm going to take the baton on him a little bit, being unfairly seen in the media. People act like he's 32 years old and hasn't won a championship and has had all these chances. Then people act like he's like in this area of his career where how come he hasn't won yet? And although he's been to 5 Eastern Conference finals, he has always exceeded expectations. He's had big moments. He's had big moments in the fourth. He is not a choker by any means. It's just that 2022 finals performance. And it's super unfair because, and I'm glad he's as mature as he is, because he's such a mature player. Because if he wasn't, this could be something that would destroy him. But he's such a mature player. He stayed with the course, played the way that he needs to play. He doesn't go out there and go, whoa, the media thinks I need to score 40. Tonight I'm scoring 40. He doesn't do that. He sticks with the Celtics game plan, and he plays the right way. He plays defense the right way. He plays hard. He's been collecting the rebounds, and he's been moving the ball around, understanding the talent he has on the team. But that's going so under the radar and not talked about. It feels like the only thing that are going to have people talking about Jason Tatum again in a good light is if he scores like 40 a night. And even then they'll say, well, how come he's not assisting more? They will just find right now, until he wins a championship, they're going to find something to dog him for, when it's just simply cap. as the kids say. It is straight cat to say that he's not a playoff performer.
With Tatum, it just feels like, and because he is not, again, we would agree, he is not a perfect player.
No.
He's not on the level of some of those guys that you mentioned. He's not a Jokic. We're not arguing that Tatum is on that level, but it feels like he's judged on what he doesn't do versus what he does do.
Yes.
And maybe Tatum isn't the guy, all Kobe comparisons aside, self-inflicted Kobe comparisons to Tatum, fancies himself that guy. But maybe he isn't the guy who is going to rip your throat out in that moment. Like, maybe he is more like Tim Duncan. Yeah. Maybe he is more like a guy who just contributes in a variety of ways, and his demeanor is a little bit more, I don't know, like less cutthroat or whatever. But like, it does feel like people focus on what he doesn't give you versus like all the myriad things that Tatum does give a team. And it's not just scoring. It's like you said, the rebounding has been insane at points in this postseason. Incredible. You really stick out. He's one of the best. He might be the best rebounding forward in basketball.
Yeah.
And assisting and the hockey assists, the pass that goes to the pass. Now, he does do annoying things. We text about it on the aforementioned text chain.
Absolutely.
Hold the ball. He'll take those step back threes. This is like been covered. We all know he's a 90-10 guy, as Bill Simmons says. That 10%, right? It's annoying, but the 90% gets overshadowed. So I totally agree with you, Luke.
But he has also closed that gap of the 90-10 a little bit. This series, I mean, this playoffs especially, which is why I think he deserves a little bit more credit. Like, he has closed that gap. He is someone who doesn't think that he needs to shoulder the scoring load. But enough about the media. Let's move on away from this, because look, we all agree. I think we know, right? This year is the year that we are that good of a team. And this is the one year that if Tatum and, everybody at the head of the snake does fall short, it will be a disappointment. And especially if it happens in tremendous fashion. But let's move on to the task at hand, and that is the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers and the Boston Celtics play in the Eastern Conference Finals. That will start Tuesday at 8:00. And this is a fun matchup. These are the two best offensive teams in the league, 1 and 2. Obviously, the Pacers play with a ton of pace. In the season series, the Celtics won 3-2. You might be wondering, 3-2, that equals 5 total games. That's because they had an in-season tournament game. So the Celtics, which was one of the most...
I liked the tournament. I just didn't like that we played the Pacers 5 times.
Exactly. Yeah, it felt like we also played them back-to-back twice, I think. Either way. In those games, like I said, the Celtics won 3, Pacers won 2. And in those 2 wins by the Pacers, one was the in-season tournament, and the other one was the game that Tatum didn't play. Tatum was out for that game. So a lot to pull from the season series, a lot to pull from these two teams, and looking forward into this matchup. It's obviously going to be a tougher matchup than we've had in the past 2 series. Fully healthy Pacers team, essentially. Max, I'm going to throw this to you. What are you looking at when you're looking at this Indiana Pacers versus Boston Celtics series?
So, before we kind of jump into the specifics and, all the stats and everything like that and really compare these two teams, I think what I want to talk about first are the intangibles, because obviously the playoffs are all about intangibles. They're all about storylines, everything like that. As we've seen in these first 2 series we've played, a lot of people can really go off when they feel like they're being written out of the equation. And that is this Pacers team. I mean, I feel like they were sort of written out of their standing towards the end of the year, because they were like, they kind of overperformed early. They're not the same team that we thought that they were, all these things. And they just released a statement after the Knicks game saying that they were up in arms about being written off from that series before it even began. These are guys who believe in themselves and they believe in each other. And we've got some specific storylines in here that will become a factor. Yes. I mean, we just saw Max Strus got waived by the Celtics because we just didn't have a place for him, and he took that so personally that every time he plays us, he freaks out and shoots for 80% from 3.
Yep.
Neesmith actually got traded. He was a guy that I don't disagree with it. I've always had Neesmith stock. I think you guys have too. I valued him. He just didn't fit in with the model at the time. But he does have a gripe to be like, hey, I was a year away, and wouldn't you love to have me now? He would be
awesome on this team, by the way. He's going to fit right the hell in.
Yeah, forget it. I mean, honestly, if we'd made these moves 1 year earlier, I think we would have found a way to keep him. And then we just would have gotten rid of Grant Williams and stuff like that. Not that they're a 1-for-1, but I think that's a huge part of this. when it comes to getting offensive rebounds, shooting percentage, all these things that are going to be the main narratives in this series, I think. So I think that's the thing I'm really looking for as we start the series. Just what kind of attitude do they come in with?
Yeah, dude. I love that. I real quick, I just want to say another one of those narratives is somebody who we laughed at it when it came to be, but he's a major addition to this team is Pascal Siakam. A couple years ago, the question was Tatum or Siakam. This was when Tatum was 22, 23, young. They were both budding stars in the league. They had both, maybe gotten one all-star selection. Obviously, he was on Toronto at that point, but that was a question because Toronto faced the Celtics in the playoffs. And there was a question of like Siakam or Tatum. Obviously, Tatum skyrocketed through that conversation, but he probably remembers that because that was a major media topic between those two. So, and he's a great addition. Tim, what do you think? Looking at this Pacers Celtics matchup, anything that sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, so Max, I think you're totally right. Where you said that we were talking about in the previous series, previous segment, like the Celtics have so much pressure on them, more pressure than any of these teams. There's like Lucas had said, like Denver won one last year. Minnesota's a couple years too early. The Pacers, whatever, same story really. Celtics have all the pressure. Pacers have none. I
None.
mean, they're like, all right, let's go. I think that is dangerous, like you said, Max. Like you even saw that in Game 5 versus the Cavs. It's like, well, there's no Mitchell, there's nobody, and they played tough. And that's because when the pressure's off and you just ball, guys tend to give you their best stuff. So I do think we're going to see great games out of those not just the Halliburtons and Siakams, but like you said, Neesmith and Nembhard and all these guys, and they've been great so far in the postseason. I also think it's interesting. We talk about the Celtics having faced a lot of injured talent. So have the Pacers. The
Yes.
Pacers faced obviously a super banged up Bucks team. No Giannis, missed Lillard for part of the series. Then they faced this Knicks team who just pour one out for the Knicks in general. I mean, there's no love lost between
To the Knicks. Everybody raise your glass real quick to the Knicks. Because
To the Knicks.
honestly, real quick before we do it, I wanted to play the Knicks if they were fully healthy because Boston, New York, it just would have been such an exciting series. But to the Knicks, sorry, but
unironically, yes. Because I mean, like, Brunson obviously fractures his hand in this final game, but all these injuries, it just sucks because it did feel like a good year for that team, and it would have been great to play them at full strength because I still think we would have won. But yeah, they played the Bucks and then they played this banged up Knicks team. So neither of these two teams has faced like a relatively healthy team. Now we get to. That's one thing I like. You mentioned Siakam, not the biggest spicy P guy. I've always sort of made fun of him a little bit as maybe he's talked about as being in a tier above where he actually is, but he is perfect for this Pacers team. He's been their best player in the playoffs.
Yes.
He's been better than Halliburton. He's been the most consistent guy. His defense obviously helps this team that is like, woebegone defensively. They're great offensively. They're not great defensively, and he's a good defender, so he helps them. And so Siakam is the key, I think, because Siakam's a guy who's going to guard, the Browns, the Tatums, and I think that'll be it'll be an interesting series for him to see how well he does there. But yeah, like the Pacers have the best offensive rating in the playoffs. They have a 120 offensive rating. That's the best of anyone remaining. Second best, Celtics. 118.9, not too different. So this is going to be lots of offense. We think maybe it'll go the other way and surprise us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this series is going to be different for the Pacers because, again, you had a lot of injuries in that Buck series, but for the Pacers, you really had like the heliocentric Brunson offense in New York. Like, it's like, how do we contain this one guy? And, obviously you had like guys like DiVincenzo and everyone else going out, and DiVincenzo played so well.
Unbelievably well. But he's a catch and shoot spot up 3-point shooter. You can't stop that when they're
But
hot.
no, I mean they had like one job defensively. It's like let's just make sure that Brunson doesn't win the series just alone.
Yeah.
Not the case with the Celtics, obviously. This is a team that's very much the opposite of that. Like there's no heliocentric basketball, or at least when we're playing well, there's not. So you have to be able to contend with obviously the Tatums, the Browns, the Whites, even Holiday. When we get Porzingis back, I think, I mean, the word is he's missing at least the first two games. Hopefully, he comes back at some point in the series and gets some run. But it'll be a tough defensive task for the Pacers, and I just don't think they're
absolutely. Look, and the two teams that we faced before, I said this earlier, the Miami Heat were the 5th best defensive net rating, or not defensive net rating, defensive rating overall in the league, and then the Cavs were the 7th. So we played 2 top 10 defenses in the first 2 rounds. And if you're wondering where the Pacers ranked all in the regular season, they were 24th.
Yeah.
24th. That's really low in defensive rating. So they're a team that, like you said, they just faced a one-dimensional offense in the Knicks, and now they're going to face somebody who can hit you from every angle, and we can play inside out. My key to this series is the paint. Everything for the Celtics needs to be geared downhill and towards the paint, and I have some reasons for that. So the Pacers were last in the regular season, last 30th. There's 30 teams in the National Basketball Association. They were last in opponents' points in the paint allowed with 58.4. So they allowed basically 60 points per game in the paint. And the Celtics obviously are a 3-point shooting team. They were probably middle of the pack with point paints per game. They didn't do too much damage in the point paint, but we know that we can. We have the skill to do it. But Pacers were also 16th in 3-point percentage. The Celtics were obviously the best team in the league shooting. But here's the caveat. The Pacers were number 1 in the league in 3-point makes and attempts. So although they were middle of the pack, 16th in the 3-point percentage and the rate that other teams were hitting against them, they were number 1 in running teams off of the 3-point line. So they are good at guarding that 3-point line. Number 1 in attempts, number 1 in makes for opponents. So they did a great job of running teams off the 3-point line. And like I said, last in the league in points in the paint. So my number 1 thing that I want to see entering this is Tatum, Brown, even White. We know he likes to do those little runners in the paint. Drew Holiday has shown a lot of low post presence when there's a good mismatch. What I want to see is attacking the paint, making their defense, putting their defense on skates and putting them on pressure to kind of collapse into the paint. And then that will open up the 3-point shooting. But if we just try to play our game on the perimeter, that's what they do best. That's what they want us to do. We have to attack the paint early and often.
And I think we will, but
well, I think, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, you go, Max.
That's right. I do think that, honestly, what you're saying about them running us off the 3-point line is a good thing for us. I mean, all the things that we see that we don't like, that we mentioned in the first segment, that we can see the media gripe about, is when the ball gets stagnant, when we start to go to ISO, everything like that. This team, they do run you off the 3-point line. They don't give you time to just do like a little loft in entry pass that we're so bad at, apparently. So I do actually think that's a bit of a good thing. If you're going to run D White off the 3 and he's going to have to drive into the paint, see Miles Turner, and then make a decision, it's like, that's our best offense, you know?
Yeah, but the only issue is that we do have a tendency sometimes to fall in love with the 3. And I know that that's a narrative that we might see as false sometimes. This team is so talented. We can shift up and go into being more of a driving team. And we've seen that in these playoffs so far. But I just want to see more of it. I want to see us do this against a healthy team. They are really good at limiting teams' 3-point shooting. And they're also, in contrast to that, they are the number 1 team in points in the paint. They scored nearly 60 points in the paint per game. So they're really good at protecting the perimeter. They're not good at paint defense, but they're really good at paint offense. And without Kristaps Porzingis, that could be an issue guarding the paint, obviously. But more so, we saw in the Cavs series with Mobley, especially, the pick and roll defense needs to be cleaned up against this Pacers team. Like, we need to keep Turner shooting threes because, like I said, they're number 1 in points in the paint with 60 a game. If we show the type of pick and roll defense that we played in the past 2 series, that's going to be an issue.
I think Turner could have a big series. Yeah, it does seem that way. I think that's a really good point, Luke. Like, offensively, you're right. You know, we're going to, they're going to probably run us off the 3-point line. We're going to probably be scoring a lot in the interior, but I think it's defensively that we need to lock up. Like, I think this Pacers team can get over your head real quick. And we've seen it in other series. I mean, like when we have lazy closeouts, when Al Horford is too deep in drop coverage, like this Pacers team will make you pay for that. So I do think I agree with you. Like, offensively, the key to the game is dominating the paint. But I think defensively, we need to make sure it doesn't get carried away from the 3-point line for the Pacers because they can also fill it up. I'm worried about guys like TJ McConnell. You mentioned Neesmith before, like them hard. We've seen these guys, they're big shot makers, and props to them. They've had a great playoffs. They've made some great shots, and they've been tested in ways that we haven't. Like I think of that Chris Middleton game in the Bucks series, that went to double overtime, or was it single overtime? I think it was double overtime.
It was double overtime, yeah.
And they've been in those positions. So I think they've got a lot of juice coming into this. So we'll see. What's your series predictions for this one? I mean, like if you had to guess the winner and number of games.
I have a number. Max, I'm gonna let you go first.
Honestly, I'm gonna say 6 just because we've gone 5 each time. I do think that these guys just have a little bit more run in them, and I do think that attitude is just gonna show its head a little bit more. And we've struggled a little bit at home, so I don't know. I'm just gonna err on the side of caution there.
Yeah, my immediate prediction is we will split the games at home again. I think that the story, and we're going to do it if we make it into the finals. I think we're going to do it in the finals too. I think the story of this team is that they split the first 2 home games every single time. I think that this game is going to go 6 as well. And to Max's point, it's because of the home performances. I just think that we are such a good road team that it will get to a point where we have a chance to close it out at home in game 5. But if we played like we played in this game 5 against Cleveland, Indy will capitalize on that. Our defense was lackluster and Marcus Morris was killing us. I mean, that's going to be a different guy. That's going to be a different offensive team. They will actually be able to capitalize it, unlike the Cavs who were injured were. So I think that we would lose a game 5 and then we'd go back into Indiana. Tatum has an all-time game, I think, and we end up making it into the finals in game 6.
I have the same prediction, Celtics in 6. It feels like a 6-game series to me. This Pacers team is better than people give them credit for. Again, they're younger. I think they get dinged for that. Halliburton's been up and down. He's had weird games where he's barely shot. Also, his assist numbers, if you really go through, I mean, they're not what they were in the regular season. So,
no.
I mean, clearly Halliburton is not in his peak condition or at least performing like it. So, but yet I think this team still, it's dangerous. They're scary and they're good. So I'm excited. Maybe that this will be the series where it starts to feel like a playoff.
I am telling you, man. I was watching this Knicks Pacers game 7, and a fan who doesn't really understand the nuances of playoff basketball might be like, I want the Knicks. Brunson just fractured his hand. They have nobody. We'd crush the Knicks. That's not what you want. Before we see a Denver, Minnesota, we don't really know where that game is going right now, Dallas, like before we see one of these teams that will really give us pressure, we need to have some adversity. We need to have a game 6, a game 7, like it needs to be pushed to that brink. We need to feel that pressure. And Tim, it looks like you are looking up an update.
Well,
to
I was just,
I was just looking as well.
Give us a live update, Timmy. What do we got?
Well, let's get a live update of the Minnesota-Denver game. We have Minnesota's 55, Denver 61. So, but the deficit was way bigger at half. I believe it was 38-53 at the half. So
38-53 at the half. Yeah.
Okay, so now it's 57-61. Minnesota just scored again.
Whoa.
And so this is a close game. You know what? I don't want to be the whatever wet blanket, but I say we close this baby out and go watch this.
Oh,
or we could just Manning cast it, just like
I know, right?
Well, it's coming out later. That won't make much sense.
It doesn't really work unless people record it and wait to watch the fourth quarter. One other thing I want to say real quick.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait, Max, real quick. I just want to say there are 3 minutes left in the third quarter of this game, and we all want to go off and we all want to watch it. And I think we've said a lot about the Pacers, but I want to do a wrap up, right? Okay. Any last minute thoughts, anything that has stuck out to you? And Max, I know you were just coming in with one of those, so I'm going to push it to you first. Yeah. Like, what is something that you want to look forward to with this series also?
So one thing I want to see, especially from Joe Mazzulla, is put a little bit of faith in some of these outsider guys. Take a little bit of the load off of Al while
Xavier Tillman.
Ideally, yeah. It's crazy. This shows you how little ESPN is paying attention to our series and everything. They keep glowing about like, yeah, they've got great depth. Xavier Tillman's giving them great minutes off the bench. I'm like, he hasn't played. Like he's played 8 minutes during like the closing, time. And I just think a lot of it's going to come down to that because they really like. I mean, the Pacers' top 8 is playable. Besides that, they're really running out of people, and we've got some guys in there that can really grind some stuff out. I'm not advocating we put Jordan Walsh in right away. Let him develop a little bit more first,
But what about Olshey Brissett? Like
absolutely, he's exactly the guy I was thinking.
And on the subject of revenge games, I mean, he was a Pacer, and he was really good for that Pacers team.
Really good.
He was.
I had him on my fantasy team for a minute there with the Pacers when he was there. Like I've talked about this on the podcast before. I love Brissett. He's not like I understand why he's not necessarily getting minutes, but like he's not unplayable in the playoffs, and he has some size, and especially when you're down a guy in Porzingis and you're not facing a team with, like a big that is going to like be an impossible matchup for Brissett. Play the guy.
Yeah.
And play Tillman. I agree with you.
Play Tillman.
Love to see Mazzulla like dip into the bench a little bit more.
This was my issue with
while Porzingis is out.
This was my issue with Mazzulla last year. He didn't dip into Hauser or Pritchard much at all last year. And I remember watching those games against Miami going, what are you doing? Like these guys who won us games all year and who made us the team that we are, you're just ignoring. And we signed Xavier Tillman for this purpose exactly. What was my number one key to the game is get paint points. Xavier Tillman is our best interior passer. He's such a smart interior passer on the offensive side. I love Al, but he's not an interior player. He's a 3-point shooter and he plays great defense and he has great hustle. But like what I want to see.
Well, he did everything last game, baby.
Well, we can talk about him in the Game 5 close. That was amazing.
Great moment for him.
The point is, I think Xavier's a better matchup, and people have been questioning Joe. Talk about the narrative that we were saying. People don't think Joe's as good as a lot of these other coaches, and I want to see him change it up truly because we do have such depth where he can play with these pieces. And even if we lose a game because he made the wrong move, I think it'd be better to find out
who wins the coaching matchup, Rick Carlisle or Joe Mazzulla.
Rick Carlisle.
Joe.
Think so?
I think Joe. Yeah.
All right.
I'm not trying to discredit Rick Carlisle. He's a really great coach, but I do just think that we have the upper hand a little bit. We also have, we got like Drew and Derek, like they're great on court coaches, as Al too. I mean, like they just have less of those guys. I mean, Pascal's like, he's a great leader and everything like that. Halliburton's obviously got their ear and he's a smart player, but they're not as experienced as these guys. And they don't have that like direct line from the coach. And so much of a game is dependent on that. So I think that's why I would kind of give it to Joe there.
I'd give it to Rick just because of the experience. I love Joe. I'm a defender.
Won a championship.
He won a championship. I'm a defender of Joe completely. But if my gut said Rick, and it's just because in certain moments watching that Knicks Pacers series, he did a good job of controlling the runs. And we all know that Joe does not like to call timeouts during runs. But I'm going to call a timeout for this podcast. Let's go watch the fourth quarter of the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you already know how it happened. So you're from the future. We're from the past. But this was a great chat about the Pacers, the Celtics, the media narrative around the Celtics. And of course, we talked about Major Wager, where Tim is big up on me. But
Luke, I don't want to, I mean, like we're spoiling our own Major Wager, but like yours looks, I mean, so you had, let's just leave this in. This is exciting for the people, right?
Oh yeah.
Like the in real time. So Murray has 29 points already. So you
cleared that easy. I knew it.
And you had Denver money line. And then what was your other leg?
And then this is where it's going awry. I had Anthony Edwards over 27 and a half.
Oh yeah, that is going awry.
That's going very awry. He's having a terrible game. He's 3 for 13 with 8.
Better points. For my thing though, because he's got 8, 5, and 6. So maybe he somehow gets up to 30.
He's not getting up to 38. He's not getting up to 38 with that. Come on, man.
No, he's not. It'd have to go to like triple overtime.
He will have to. For me,
I win.
For me, he needs a 20-point fourth quarter and the Denver Nuggets to win still. So I just see both of us losing this bet.
That's not happening.
Okay, great breakdown of the Celtics and Pacers. I'm excited. Let's maybe do the same, the three blind mice, the three brothers, Erwin hour again next week, maybe to break down
three blind mice.
3 blind mice.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. 3 blind drunk mice. To break down what has happened, Tuesday is when it starts. We have Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then Monday. Those are the first 4 games of this series. Looking forward to that. Thank you guys for breaking this down with me. And let's go watch that Wolves Nuggets game.
Go Wolves, baby.
Go Nuggets.
And go C's. Most
really, go Nuggets. You want Nuggets?
I picked them to win my major wager.
Oh yeah, the major wager. Yeah, but in general,
yeah, the thing that's going to cost us our life.
So you care more about money than you do about our. Yeah. All right.
Greedy.
All right, let's go Celtics.
Yeah,
Face.
Because this is the dribble. Is
yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Maybe
really I'm going to do it there. I'm going to cut it there.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
I'm going to cut it right there. It's going to be like.